When I was a boy, my dad would always take me riding the back roads. It was during one of these trips that we passed a beautiful mansion in Jefferson City, Tennessee. I told my dad, "Man, I wish we lived in a house like that." And my dad simply responded, "Son, you can never judge a man's wealth by the house he lives in." Well, that was nearly 40 years ago. Yet, if you ever find yourself driving through Jefferson City, Tennessee, chances are that you too might find yourself gazing at this spectacular mansion, sitting high on a hill, and marvel at its beauty and ponder its history. Built in 1868 as a centerpiece of one man's 1,200-acre empire, this mansion has stood for over 155 years as a symbol of power and wealth for all to see. Yet, this story isn't what you might think. In fact, it's a textbook example of how money can't buy happiness, and how you can never judge a man's true wealth by the house he lives in. And so with that, my friends, this is the true story of the Glenmore Mansion in Jefferson City, Tennessee. Our story begins in 1788, when a family of 9 in Virginia loaded all of their earthly possessions onto a flat-bottom boat, and they floated all the way down to East Tennessee. The area that they settled in was on a creek that was covered with a vivid green moss, so they named the area Mossy Creek. The family opened a mill, and it attracted others to the area, and by 1815, nearly 100 families had moved to the area. Heck, they had blacksmith shops and stores, a post office, and many other businesses sprang up. Yes, sir, Mossy Creek was an up-and-coming community. During the 1830s, zinc mining operations began in the area, and this began to attract many businessmen. One of them was a man named George Branner. Now, Branner was a member of the Tennessee House of Representatives, and he served as a justice of the peace and was a prominent member of the Presbyterian Church. Anyway, Mr. Branner set about purchasing thousands of acres of land in the area, and he opened up a lucrative mercantile store and a grist mill right on Mossy Creek. Now, he operated that mill all the way to his death. However, when he died, his son, John Roper Branner, inherited all of his father's land and his businesses. Now, John was a visionary, and he knew that the more the Mossy Creek community grew, the wealthier he would become. And with that in mind, John made a series of calculated land donations. He donated land to build City Hall, the Presbyterian Church, and a church for the former slaves in the area. He even donated land that would eventually become Carson Newman University. However, his most important land donation was in 1858, when he gave 3 acres to build the Mossy Creek Train Depot. He also gave the railroad that ran from Bristol to Knoxville the right-of-way to run right across his land. The only stipulation he required for this land gift was that every train had to stop at the Mossy Creek Depot. And, as you might imagine, this had a huge economic impact on the area. Heck, it wasn't long before Branner himself was a member of the board of directors for the East Tennessee and Virginia Railroad. So, Mr. Branner decided that he would build a mansion that East Tennessee had never seen the likes of before. A 3-story mansion with a huge tower where he could stand and overlook the kingdom he had created. John mobilized his 50 slaves, and he set about firing the bricks that were needed for the 8,000-square-foot mansion. Yet, no sooner than he had started, the Civil War broke out in 1861. His mansion would have to wait. For the next 4 years, the Civil War tore America apart. On December 29, 1863, the war came to Mossy Creek. Union and Confederate forces clashed at 9 a.m. in the morning. The battle raged throughout the day. And by nightfall, more than 500 men had lost their life in the Battle of Mossy Creek. Now, John Branner had spent the majority of the Civil War focusing on keeping the railroad open so that supplies could continue being shipped, and many considered him a hero. His actions resulted in him being named the president of the East Tennessee and Virginia Railroad. With the dark days of the Civil War behind him, John returned his focus on fulfilling his dream of building an 8,000 square foot mansion he would call the Oaks. Construction began in 1867, and it was completed in 1868. However, tragically, John suffered a stroke at the age of 47, and he died. He never slept a single night in the mansion. The old saying, "Money can't buy happiness," comes to my mind as I stop and I think about that. You see, John Roper was a millionaire by today's standards. He was on top of the world financially. He was one of the most respected businessmen in the southern United States. However, in his private life, he was a tormented man. He had fathered 8 children, and tragically, 6 of them had died before they reached age 6. And his oldest son was just 19 when he died of typhoid fever while enlisted as a soldier in the Civil War. That's right, only one child survived. And for the next 13 years, John's widow, Deborah, and her only surviving son lived in the mansion. Eventually, Miss Branner picked up the pieces and, with the help of her late husband's brother, they opened a school inside of the mansion for young ladies. The school was a finishing school of sorts, to teach aspiring ladies seeking husbands the art of conversation and music and art, Latin, math, and further refinement. The school operated until 1879 inside of the mansion. By 1882, Miss Branner's health had begun to decline. She had lost everything in the world that she loved, and she was a prisoner in her Victorian mansion. It was too much for her to bear, so she sold the property, and just 3 years later, she died. Can you imagine what it must have been like for Miss Branner to live all alone in her dream home, 8,000 square feet and 27 rooms of Victorian elegance, all of the earthly possessions that money could buy? Yet she was all alone, and she had lost everything in the world that she loved. Her husband had spent his whole life devoted to building this home for their family. Yet their dreams met a tragic fate. No, sir, you can never judge a man's wealth by the house he lives in. The irony of this story is that when Miss Branner finally sold the home due to her broken heart, it was bought by a lawyer named Milton Jarnigan. Now, Mr. Jarnigan and his family would live in this home and raise a happy, healthy family for the next 83 years. Thank you for watching this video and your support of the preservation of Appalachian history. You can support this channel by going to the AppalachianStoryteller.com. There you'll find Appalachian-made candles, 100% locally produced, right here in East Tennessee. Thanks for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, I hope you'll consider subscribing to this channel, where I share all sorts of Appalachian history and storytelling. Till next time, my friends.